The dark entry passage leads directly onto the Green Court. At the end of Dark Entry, you meet the gatehouse, which was built to house a medieval prior, and leads onto the Green Court, which was built by Prior Selling in the late 15th century. Just to your right is the Deanery, which contains part of Prior Goldston's new mansion of the early 16th century. This house became the Dean's home at Reformation and has been substantially rebuilt and repaired many times. Past the Deanery, you will see a range of grey flint buildings containing a gate. This once contained a monastic brewery, granary, as well as monk stables. Built in the early 14th century, this again has been restored and rebuilt many times. Just under the gate, you'll see a pair of fire hooks, there to tear down buildings so fire didn't spread. As you walk along the north side of Green Court, enjoy the spectacular view of the north side of the cathedral. This is the only place in the precincts where you can appreciate the great length and complexity of the church and its adjoining buildings. Don't miss the tiny Cromwellian house on your right. The house is dated 1659 in a brick pattern along its front. On your right is one of the most famous views in the cathedral, that of the Norman entry staircase. This staircase was built in the middle of the 12th century. Once led up to a magnificent hall. It was another guest hall belonging to the cathedral and was called High or Hog Hall because it was raised up on arches. The hall was destroyed about 2 centuries ago, but the stairs and some of the arches that support the southern end of the hall were, by good fortune, preserved, and now form part of the King's School. The Great Court Gate was built at the same time as the Norman entry staircase and contains a high tunnel vault. The division of the gate into one large and one small entrance was done in the 14th century to allow the use of smaller doors. Just think how big the original ones must have been. Proceed through the gate and notice its fine decorated stonework. You are now entering the Mint Yard, or Almonry Yard as it was called. This once contained a large chapel built by Prior Henry of Eastry in the early 14th century. Just to the left is a doorway with a modern representation of the arms of Cardinal Pole, Archbishop of Canterbury, during the reign of Mary Tudor. He is commemorated for ensuring the survival of the school in those difficult times. And back through the gates and follow the wall that separated the property of the monks from that of the Archbishop, and you see a strange wooden structure called a pentis, which dates from the end of the 14th century. It's a wooden covered way running from the court gate to the cellar hall. It was provided by Prior Chillenden for the convenience of important guests and is a rare example of its kind. Now you come upon the buildings that make up Chillenden Chambers. The house was built by Prior Chillenden in the late 14th century as a guest house for the most important visitors. Now it's the house of the Archdeacon. The chambers also contained sections of other important monastic buildings, including the monk's kitchen, larder and storehouse. As you walk back towards Dark Entry and the Deanery, you'll see on your right, through the railings, part of the main dormitory and the so-called necessarium. The latter building was aptly named, for it was the Monks Lavatory. There were 56 seats placed back to back up on the first floor of a long, narrow building. Underneath was constructed a drain, with water flowing continuously and flushing the lavatories. Considering the whole system was built about 1160, it was surprisingly modern and hygienic. Now you can return to the cathedral through Dark Entry.